Hi, this is Justin, your host at Reclaiming Christendom. No more jury trials in the UK? Getting rid of elections just because the Liberals might think they're going to lose? This might sound Orwellian, but this is the reality of the modern UK. And my colleague, Gavin Ashenden, is going to tell you about these things and the other crazy things happening in the UK right now, including a bit of good news. So let's listen.
Hello, this is Gavin Ashenden for Reclaiming Christendom from Blighty, from Britain, for Foreign Dispatches. People like good news, and I thought perhaps I would try and find some good news, but it's almost all bad news. The two things that have happened very recently are that the Labour government have banned 4 mayoral elections, and the only reason seems to be because a Reform candidate would win. Well, the kind of democracy that bans elections is a very primitive kind that there hardly deserves a term of democracy, but that's where we've come to in Britain today. At the same time, a very ancient right given to us under Magna Carta for jury trials is being removed because the government believes that the delay in accusations coming to court is too long. Well, of course, it is indeed too long. But two wrongs don't make a right. And to remove jury trials from the rights of citizens beyond a particular level of seriousness is an enormous assault, particularly since the professions are in the hands of left-leaning, wokeified progressives. And at a moment like that, only a jury trial can actually give a reasonable promise of the possibility of innocence, particularly when the crime you're accused of has some level of progressive element to it. There is one small piece of good news, and that is that a professor from Cambridge, who's a very effective Christian, has been handpicked by Nigel Farage, who ought to be the next Prime Minister if we get elections. And so if that was the case, then Nigel Farage would have as one of his influencers and advisors one of the most prominent and effective Christians in Britain. His name is James Orr. He's a professor at Cambridge University. He was responsible for getting Jordan Peterson there. There was a big row when Peterson, first asked Peterson, they withdrew the invitation. But then after more people were involved, there was some kickback and Peterson got there. I have reason to be grateful to James. He held a seminar behind doors by invitation only for Jordan Peterson and a neuropsychiatrist called McGilchrist, who wrote a really fascinating book called The Divided Brain. Interestingly, both Peterson and McGilchrist were agnostic about the extent to which they were Christian. So James Orr invited about 10 academics to interrogate them, to interview them, to have to have a discussion with them. I was one of them. I was very pleased to be there. I think things have moved. This was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. Things have moved very quickly since then. In those days, it seems legitimate to be agnostic about your beliefs if you were someone as professionally developed as either Peterson or McGilchrist. Now I think it's harder to claim anonymity. The battle lines are so fiercely drawn between democracy, neo-Marxism, wokery on one side, and Christendom on the other. I think we've got to the point where you can't take an agnostic middle space anymore, because to do so is effectively to side with the forces of progression. I'm hoping that Peterson will make his mind up and become a Christian. He's clearly open to the possibility, but like so many intellectuals, he doesn't want to make that great act of surrender. It's an act of surrender you have to make towards being a Christian, and there's yet another one towards becoming a Catholic. So what we hope is that James Orr, who has such enormous influence and has been so effective in gathering together people who are Christians, at the top of society, particularly in the universities, might become a highly influential right-hand person to Nigel Farage. What difference will that make? I think in talking to some friends of mine, I think the only way out of where we are in Britain is either by mass conversions to Christianity or by some form of civil conflict that we normally call civil war. The people who've got us by the throat politically are not going to let go. And the problem is the English have been, particularly the last two generations, have been completely brainwashed to become supine and to give in rather than to fight for their birthright, to fight for freedom, to fight for democracy. So, as usual, things hang in the balance here. I'm committed to helping people become Christians rather than taking the road of violence. So we need to become even more energetic, and we need people like James Orr even more than we did before. Please pray for him, pray for all of us as we seek to reclaim Christendom.
So as you see, Christendom is in a battle in the UK. Every bit of our culture is under attack, and it is only together as a team that we can defeat these dark forces. Don't forget to like and subscribe to these videos so we can reach you with every new bit of information we have. Thank you, and God bless.